Hello there folks, back again for another video. In this one I thought I would go through some of the awesome Warhammer Age of Sigmar reveals that came out at the end of last week. Now, for anyone who knows and has been watching the channel for a while, I'm a big fan of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It's one of my favourite games. I think I enjoy it a little bit more than Warhammer 40,000 at the moment, and I think that Games Workshop over the last couple of years have done an excellent job of revitalising the world and the Mortal Realms in general, and realising all of the different factions in various ways. And that means that, you know, whenever new stuff comes out for it, I get pretty excited. And last week we got to see a big reveal for the Helsmiths of Hashut, which are essentially your Chaos Dwarfs, almost, from times gone by and the world that was, who have made their way into the Mortal Realms now and are fighting alongside the other forces of Chaos. So we'll start with the trailer that you can see here, which I thought was quite nice. So yes, obviously the teaser that they'd done a little while ago was talking about the idea of big hats and all that kind of good stuff. And then we obviously got this wonderful preview which showed off all of the different miniatures that you're going to be getting as part of the army set, as well as some additional bits and pieces that are coming out after the fact. Now, what was really nice about this particular preview, in my opinion, was that I genuinely thought that Games Workshop were only just going to show off what was going to be in the army set, and that was it. But we actually got to see a little bit more from them over the course of the show, and subsequently as part of the article over on Warcom, which we're looking at here. So, for those who don't know, the Helsmiths of Hashut are essentially the Chaos Dwarfs, the sort of darker side of Dwarden society. They are known as the Zardron, as you can see there. And whilst their brethren turned into the likes of the Fireslayers and the Caradron Overlords, and of course, obviously, the Dispossessed amongst the cities of Sigmar, these folks lashed themselves to Hashut, the Bullfather, and from there decided to take a slightly different path that sort of hid them away from the world for a while. Now, we had obviously seen snippets and hints to the Zardron over the course of sort of last edition and this edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We'd seen some nods to them previously in some things like Warcry warbands, as well as popping up in the fluff that you found as part of the Cruel Boys, with the addition of Hobgrats there and their various munitions and things that they were using. But now this is our time to actually finally get a look at the Zardron, the Helsmiths, in all of their glory. So everything's going to be starting off with, as you can see here, the army set, which will be your first chance to get your hands on these particular miniatures. The set comes with a character, some of your elite infantry, an artillery piece, which is very in keeping with the Chaos Dwarf aesthetic, and also that particularly awesome bull monster in the back as well. So leading the way, we have the War Despot, who is particularly Chaos Dwarf in his approach. He has big ass horns and a big beard. His hat isn't quite as big as they used to be, but still a fairly awesome model in its own regard. I like that a lot of the design from their arms and armor is carried through into their weapons, so you can see that in the way that that's kind of designed the edge of that pole arm there. They are then backed up by elite infantry in the form of the Infernal Cohort, as you can see here. Now, these fellows can be armed with their sort of short stabbing swords, or swinging swords, I suppose, as you can see here, alongside their shields, or you can actually give them spears if you'd prefer to go down that route. You can see some of the spears there. And this, when they were talking about this as part of the preview, was quite interesting because it started to go into a little bit more detail about their weapons and how they sort of view themselves. So a lot of their weapons, so you can see the ones here wielded by their champions and things, are actually infused with demonic energy. So you can see it here on the War Despot as well. Those little orbs, or sprouts, as Eons of Battle calls them, are where they have managed to sort of coalesce demon energy into powering their blades. And that's obviously a good thing, and nothing will ever go wrong when doing something like that. You can obviously see here on the back of this guy's weapon, he's got a sort of similar coil built into the back of his firearm there, which is quite interesting as well. So they use demon imbued weapons, demonic energy, to destroy their foes. I also really liked the touch of adding the gonger and the gong as part of this set as a musician. Seems an apt way for them to use and abuse a Hobgrat, and also a fun little touch to that sort of Babylonian style aesthetic that you tend to get with the Chaos Dwarfs, that is obviously carried through into the design here for the Mortal Realms as well. In addition to the Infernal Cohort, we also got one of the artillery pieces. Now this is the Tormentor Bombard that can also be built as the Death Shrieker rocket battery, as you can see here. And similarly, it is powered by these engines stoked with demonic power. As you can see, formed from refined and processed demons that work at the core of these weapons. And you can see them built into the heads of those rockets there as well. These have something of that kind of classic train design that you tended to see with the older Chaos Dwarfs from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but sort of taken a little bit of a different direction. It still kind of fits with that slightly more, I suppose you'd say, over-the-top sort of magic science element that you get to Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and fits in quite nicely. I like the Bombard. I think the Tormentor Bombard is really cool. I'm not as necessarily won over by the Death Shriek. I think it looks a little bit weird, but I think it could also just be the case that it's the paint scheme that I'm not particularly drawn to there. But I like the idea of big artillery. That feels very Helsmiths. That feels very Chaos Dwarfs, which is quite cool. You also have the Dominator engine here, which is another one of their big contraptions, fueled by another one of those furnaces imbued with demonic energy. You can see some of their eyes in the background there. It can either be armed with those massive immolation cannons, as they've called them, or you can arm it with Bane maces, as you can see here, for going ham in close combat, or going beef, I suppose. I think I prefer this version of the model. I think there's something about it being a combat monster that works quite nicely in terms of its pose. But I think if you maybe played around with the position of the arms on this, as if maybe they were both pointing out in front, that could be quite a nice little touch. And it could look as if it's just about to sort of engulf its foe in demonic energies, burning them to a crisp, which I think is quite nice. The box set that you get will also come with the battle tome for the Helsmiths of Hashut, with that limited edition cover on the front. And as you can see here, it'll tell us a little bit more about who Hashut is and how they relate to Grungni, Grimnir, Valaya, and Gazul, and all the rest of them as well. So that'll be really cool. So it's a very elite force with 32 War Scrolls and enhancement cards. So, you know, a fair bevy of options already for those people playing as the Helsmiths. And I'm fairly sure we're going to be seeing some interesting spells, perhaps, as well as themed terrain to go alongside these guys as well. Maybe a big ziggurat could be quite fun, or a Bullfather icon or something like that. It would be quite a good touch. But as I said, one of the things that was nice about the preview is they didn't just stop at showing off what was going to be in the army set. They also delved deep into more of the miniatures coming to bulk out the Helsmiths range, leading with the Demon Smiths, who are practitioners of dark magic amongst the ranks of the Helsmiths. And not only can they fire, you know, demonic essence at their enemies, they can also use their abilities to enhance and repair your artillery. So something of a backline force potentially for you to be using alongside your army. You then have the Ashen Elder, who you see here. So he is effectively a priest for the Helsmiths. A nice little tidbit that they talked about with him is that you'll see that he's using a hammer. So hammers tend to be seen as something that the Helsmiths don't really play around with in terms of a weapon, because it reminds them of their past and their time as one of the other Duardin that used to exist within the Mortal Realms. But the Ashen Elder makes a great point of using the hammer, because he dips it in the blood of felled Duardin priests, be they rune priests or something of that ilk, amongst their clans, and then uses that alongside the demonic energies in order to do terrible things to the opponent. You'll also see that this also shows off the toll that it takes to wield this demonic power, as they are slowly petrifying and twisting as they get access to that magic. So, an Ashen Elder, whilst powerful, will eventually potentially be returned to the stone from whence they came, which is quite cool. And a nice touch. One thing that I really like about the Helsmiths as a whole is I think their characters look super cool. I think they've done a really nice job with the characters, and if nothing else, they're a reason to buy into this box set. We also have some more of their elite options, so it wouldn't be the Chaos Dwarfs, or in this case the Zardron, without the addition of Bull Centaurs. And so these blessed warriors of Hashut have been twisted into the form of a bull and a Duardin at once, and they can be armed with those massive brazen mauls, again powered by demonic energy, and will charge through the enemy ranks, smashing them aside. You'd imagine they're going to have some pretty cool trampling style rules for maybe displacing the enemy. They're going to be really cool. If you are even more devoted, I should say they are your sort of aggressive unit. If you are even more devoted to Hashut, then you can also get the Anointed Sentinels. So the Anointed Sentinels are the defenders of the temples and the devout places that worship the Bull Father. So you will have your Bull Centaurs charging out into the enemy lines, whilst the Anointed Sentinels charge around in your own territory, perhaps defending your objectives from enemy fire, which is quite cool. You also have this set, which is quite cool, and puts me in mind of the Iron Drakes from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Warhammer the Old World, and of course now as well Warhammer Age of Sigmar, amongst the ranks of the regular dwarves, the Duardin and the Dispossessed. And these are your Infernal Razors. So these are your Duardin who carry ranged weapons into battle, and they can be armed with Grismalock blunderbusses or Crag Thurun flame hurlers, equally deadly when deployed on the battlefield. And as you can see, some very nice designs there once again as well. Big fan of a lot of the infantry stuff and the characters that we're seeing for the Horns of Hashut. They were just a warband. The Helsmiths, I think they've done a really nice job of balancing the look of them as well. I think they'll be a really fun and interesting army to paint. I'd quite like to see some people going down the route of potentially painting them in a slightly Urakar scheme, so with slightly more of like a purple skin, or like a pale purple skin with white beards. I think would be a really nice twist to kind of bring them in line with sort of that type of aesthetic from the Underdark and D&D. I think that could be really cool. You also have the ranks of the Hobgrat Vandals. Of course, they had to stick a Z on the end of it. They couldn't just leave it as an S because of copyright, probably. But these are the Hobgrats that don't fight for the Cruel Boys, or at least not yet, and instead head out to battle alongside the rest of the Zardron. They are your sort of throwaway unit almost on the tabletop. They do not get blessed with much in the way of armour, although a few of them have managed to scavenge things like shoulder plates, shields, and a few breastplates here and there. But the majority of their weapons are probably tools that they would use in daily life that they now turn to the task of killing in the name of the Zardron, on the tabletop. And again, it's nice to see them following through, because hobgoblins back in the day were a major part of the Chaos Dwarfs, and so it would be weird to see them reimagined in such a fashion for Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the Mortal Realms without the addition of something like these folks here and the Vandals. So a nice little touch there as well, and it will be fun to see what people do with them when it comes to painting. We then got a few of the special characters, well, a special character, and also some of the larger units as well. So Urakar is the big special character that gets added into the mix for the Helsmiths, the Father of Darkness himself. He is, again, sort of tied into that vibe of using demonic magic to decimate his foes. But similarly to what we saw with the priest for the Helsmiths, he is starting to petrify, much like his kin and the Ashen Elder, because of what he's using and how much he is taking. So it's good to see that that power has a price. He comes mounted on the back of Gorakos, the Infernal Taurus, as you can see there, which is a being almost entirely crafted of some metal they've dug out of the ground. It'd be interesting to see someone paint that not as metal, but as almost stone, like a statue come to life, because I think it might fit a bit nicer, and it would kind of be an interesting sort of way of echoing the idea of the sort of petrifying warrior on the back, potentially. But I'm sure people will have some ideas of their own. This can also be built as a regular demon smith on the back of an Infernal Taurus. So you can build this with a couple of different options. You can also make it a female version of the character or a male version of the character as well. So whichever way you want to go with that one. And of course they've painted this one here in a different sort of metallic-y look. But again, I'd like to see someone maybe play around with it done as stone. Could also be easier to paint as well, which would be a benefit. I like the guy or the gal on the back. I'm not still really much of a fan of this. I think it looks a little bit too toy-like, but it could just be the clean painting of the miniatures that we get from Games Workshop, which never tends to necessarily show them off in, I guess you'd say, the best light, but it gives you an idea of what they look like at the very least, and you can see all the different facets of the miniature as well. After all of that, once the army set is out, the next step is for the new Chaos Battletome to be added into the mix with the Helsmiths of Hashut. So you'll be able to pick this up and dive into it. Will come with all of the rules you need for playing them in your games. Another addition to the Chaos Pantheon in a way, with Hashut now joining the ranks of Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, and of course the Horned Rat as well is in there too. So it'll be very fascinating to see how that all works, because you could very easily sort of tie Hashut, I suppose, into the idea of him being a sort of more destruction-based god. But I'm sure they will have some intriguing lore in their book, which will tie them into the events of previous editions and also the current storyline as well, which is following that sort of Skaven invasion and now the fight in Gairan as well. So an interesting mix of stuff for the Helsmiths of Hashut. Some very cool character miniatures, some very nice rank and file, some Marmite, I suppose you'd say, artillery and monstrous creatures and special characters. But from all I've seen online, it feels like the Helsmiths of Hashut have kind of sat quite nicely with the majority of the audience for both Warhammer Age of Sigmar and also, strangely enough, Warhammer the Old World and Warhammer Fantasy Battles. I've seen a lot of people already considering picking these up, and instead of putting them on round bases, you can see here, sticking them on squares instead. So yeah, for those people who are excited by the Horns of Hashut, the Helsmiths of Hashut, I'm going to keep saying that wrong. please let me know what you think about them in the comments down below. Was it a nice army? Was it a well regarded reveal in your opinion? Do you think you'll be tempted by the likes of the army set? Will you be bringing these in line with some of the older Chaos Dwarf stuff that came out from Forge World, or will you be starting afresh? And what do you think's missing from this as well? They have big crushy things, they have big guns, they have their elite infantry, they have their characters, monsters, etc. Where could they go next when it comes to the Helsmiths? And is this tempting you as an option? You'll have to let us know. So yes, please dive into the comments down below and tell me what you think of the Helsmiths of Hashut. They certainly were a welcome reveal by Games Workshop over the course of last week. And yeah, dive into the comments and let me know what you think. I'm going to dive in and get stuck into another video, but please like, share, comment, do all that good stuff. Most importantly, start a dialogue down below because I love hearing what you folks have to say. So yes, thank you very much, and I'll see you folks in the next one. Bye for now.